And I'm Doug Moody, and I'll be your facilitator today. Next slide, please. So today, Bernice is going to provide an update of the overall VTA BSV Phase 2 project. Then following Bernice, Al Calnan with VTA will highlight how the project's excavated material will be beneficially reused. Then Erica is going to share an update about VTA's Downtown Customer Service Center. After Erica, Clarence Eng is here with VTA to provide, is here to give you an update regarding the Business Resource Program. Then Erica will discuss the project's early construction activities. Then at the end, as always, we'll have space for the CWG member report outs. A reminder that the report out portion of the meeting is your opportunity to share with the group how you've been sharing information and updates about the project with your communities and what you have heard from them. Then we'll conclude with some info about the next round of CWG meetings in September. And before we get into the presentation, as we normally do, I'm going to ask the CWG members who are present here today to introduce themselves, just name an organization. I don't see Anna. I do see Todd. Todd, do you want to say hi?
Yep, of course. Good afternoon, Todd Trickell with Hunter Storm, also known as Hunter Properties, also known as Hunter Partners. We're your neighbors there to the north.
Thank you very much. Welcome, Todd. David, do you want to say hi?
Sure, David Kajiga, Santa Clara University, across the street from the project. I think everybody knows where we're at. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Welcome. Jack?
Yes.
Jack.
Hello,
Here's Jack.
everyone. Jack from South Bay Historic Railroad Society, and we're open on the weekends. So bring your kids down so they can watch the model trains.
Good pitch to a group of chain nerds. Thanks, Jack. I don't see John. As you see Jonathan. You want to say hi, Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan Evans. I'm the president of the Old Quad Residents Association, which is the community neighborhood right there.
Thank you very much. And I don't see Luke. Welcome, Jonathan. I don't see Ron. And we're looking for a member, potential member. We're looking for a member to fill the spot in Silicon Valley Chamber of Commerce. Next slide, please. So before Bernice gets into her presentation, just a reminder about some upcoming meetings, a heads up about them. We'll be presenting about VTA's BART project at the San Jose City Council on May 23rd. Then a couple of presentations at BART task forces, the Accessibility Task Force on May 25th, the Bike Advisory Task Force on June 5th. Then we'll be at the Santa Clara City Council meeting on June 6th, where an update regarding the Santa Clara station design will be given. And then we'll be back here again for a CWG meeting in September. And then, the VTA BART project is regularly at the VTA Board of Directors meetings, slated for June, August, and September. There's other meetings coming up that we think you should know about. Kristen will email those out to the group. And so those are the upcoming meetings. Maybe we'll see you there. And with that, I'm gonna pass it over to Bernice for a project update.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. We'll start with the next slide, which just is a visual of our project alignment. I'm sure you're all very familiar with the project, 6 miles, 5 of it in the tunnel. That is the lighter blue, and then the dark blue on either ends of the section is the above ground portion. The 4 stations, 3 of them what we call underground. They have the above ground presence of a station building, but the boarding is below ground, and then the Santa Clara station where you board at grade. We have been working very closely with our project management team and our general engineering contractor, and now our tunnel and track work contractor in working on general items like preliminary engineering for all of the contracts. In addition to the CP2 contract, there's contracts for the systems, yard, and stations. And then we do what's called an interdisciplinary design review process, where sort of each of the different departments and divisions of the project review the contract specifications to make sure their areas are reflected adequately. For our side, we make sure that all of our specifications related to outreach communications and things that are important to consider and how the project's delivered and the way that it's delivered regarding community is considered. So that's what we weigh in as the external affairs team. We have had several presentations of recent. Our chief and our CFO presented to the Metropolitan Transportation Commission. That is the sort of funding, the group that takes the state money and disperses it by allocations and formulas to all of the transit partners in the Bay Area. And they did a presentation to that group, really trying to raise visibility for the project and make sure we get every cent that's available to this project that we can qualify for. We've been doing ongoing coordination with BART. As you all know, VTA is the owner, the designer, and the builder, and then BART will ultimately operate the system. So we work in close coordination with them as we advance design of the project. And then we are presenting, as Doug mentioned, to the City of San Jose and City of Santa Clara councils for the CTMP. So those are those dates that Doug had just referenced. And we can go to the next slide. Wanted to give you an update on our federal funding process. The chart on the right shows all of the funding, but we are in the middle of the federal new starts funding process. We got a transfer from what was previously the expedited project delivery program. There was a cap of 25%. So for us to qualify for additional funding, we transitioned to the federal new starts funding program. It's the funding program we used for the phase 1 project. And this program allows us to get up to 50% of the project. So our current request is 4.6 billion. The funding chart is complete except for the 375 million that we're pursuing through those regional funds I just mentioned. We, in a short time period, approximately June, July, will be entering into the next phase of this funding program. There's various phases, which is the engineering phase. And that's the last phase before we make the actual application for our full funding grant agreement. That full funding grant agreement is really the dollar amount and the allocation schedule for our federal grant money. And we can go to the next slide. As I mentioned before, we've been working on advancing the other contract packages. We awarded the tunnel and track work contract CP2 back in May of last year. So we've been working closely with that contractor, and that's related to some of that early works that we're going to be doing to prepare for the tunnel and tunnel boring machine. But we have the 3 other contracts. CP1, we call it contract package 1. That is our systems contract. That is all of the things like traction, power, train control, communications, thing that make the trains run and the systems run. Tunnel and track work, as you know, it's the big tunnel and the shafts for the stations. And that contract includes procurement of the tunnel boring machine, which is pending in the very near future. The contract package 3 is our Newhall Yard and Santa Clara station. And then the other contract package 4 is for the other 3 stations that I referenced, or we call them underground, but they have above ground station facilities. Those contracts will be awarded, the other 3, sometime in the next 12 to 18 months or so. So for the contract package 2, the tunnel and track work under Kiewit Shea Trailer, that contract is progressive design build delivery. We brought that contractor on early in the design at the conceptual preliminary design, which was about 15%. That's now been advanced to about 30%. We are working with them through an open book process. One of the initial efforts of the joint venture was to look at innovations, ways that we could more efficiently and more beneficially to the ultimate users deliver this project. We ended up landing on this slightly larger tunnel with a center platform. It enabled us to do some station refinements and make a better experience for how passengers get from those above ground stations to the down below platforms. We are in negotiations for some of the other contract elements. This contract is in a double phase, sort of the early works and then later on the actual tunnel work. So each of these kind of elements of the contract package are priced out, and then we come to an agreement, negotiate, and that gets awarded. I think we can go to the next slide. Here's our procurement look ahead. As I mentioned, we have all of these various contracts, and with that, that is what our program management services contract is. We currently have a program management team, and we will be re-awarding that or putting that out to bid for Q1 of 2024. As we get further in construction, we're about to put out an RFP for a construction management services consultant contractor, and that is who will actually oversee all the construction and do the QC and manage those construction contracts. And then we have the construction procurements for those other three construction contracts, 2024 and 2025. This is our project look ahead. We're looking out at 5 years because we have not yet awarded those other contracts. So our initial work right now is going through that federal funding process and advancing design. We're submitting that 30% as part of getting into the engineering phase for the federal New Starts program. Early construction, as you can see here, is the mid-2024 timeframe. We're ready to begin some of the early works, and that's the work that those CTMP, Construction Transportation Management Plans, that we're presenting to the councils will cover. And that's really going over the means and methods and how we will maintain mobility during those early works. And major construction will occur between around mid-2025, commence through 2028 and beyond. And forgot the in the news part. So we have really been trying to raise visibility, and as such, we had applied for and received an award from Engineering News Record. They are a very renowned engineering publication, and VTA was named as a 2023 Owner of the Year. It was both for our work on the BART Silicon Valley project, as well as the other 80 capital projects that VTA works on. We just had our Chief Program Officer, Gary Griggs, attend the Metropolitan Transportation Commissioners Owners Night, and that is where many of the consultants and contractors in the business attend. So we got to highlight our project and the future opportunities for people to engage contractors, workforce on the project. Tonight, actually, while we're doing this meeting, we have some of our team out in downtown San Jose at a kind of block party event. There was a meeting of a carabiner event. This is really about revitalizing downtown San Jose. So we are participating with some of the other businesses, highlighting the project, and they're highlighting their businesses and services. We've still been working very collaboratively with Downtown West. We have been told to still plan around there being some type of breaking ground in 2023. We have been shared the same information that I believe many of you have read in the papers, that they remain committed to San Jose for the long term and to that development. So we are still collaborating closely with Google as we advance the project, especially around the Diridon Station area. And I think that's my last slide, and now I'm happy to answer any questions.
I had a quick question about the CP3. I noticed that I thought it was a design build, but it looks like it's a design bid build. So does that mean you're awarding like a design now, and then you'll bid out the build?
Yeah, we're advancing the design further. Initially, it was going to be a design build, but based on sort of the current contracting environment, the rate of inflation, we are going to be advancing that design and then awarding it as a design bid build contract. So that's why those dates are pushed out. They were originally going to be awarded sooner, but we are going to be advancing that design and awarding them as a design bid build contract.
Okay, so does that mean that somebody will be doing that, to understand that somebody will be doing the design? There'll be another design phase where the design becomes more complete, and then that will go out for bidding for construction and build. Is that correct way to understand it?
Yes, we currently have our general engineering contractor working on and advancing that design.
So there is no additional design firm that you're planning to bring in for the design phase. Then it's the current contractor you have for design, and then you'll bid.
Yeah, yes, I do not believe there are any plans on bringing any more architects or designers in for the station design to carry it from 30 to like 60% design.
Okay. And will there be opportunities for the community to participate in the design process?
So we do have our design review committees, and the base design that we do per the BART facility standards There was significant work already done by Foster and Partners on those station designs to fit everything needed for those facilities to make them operational BART stations. As we further engage, we have plans around the July-August timeframe to re-engage the design review committee on things such as public art. You know, we discussed some of that in the earlier design review committees, but now we'll be looking at public art, some of the wayfinding in the stations and signage. And for Diridon and downtown, looking at what we might be doing for the rooftop facilities that are part of those stations. So that would be the next plan engagement for those design review committees.
So at the moment, you're not expecting any more refinements to the wider
No.
like flow or any other design.
No.
Okay.
And then we also have some questions from James in the chat, which Erica has answered. And the CWG, I'll add the CWG trailer joint ventures for the tunnel and track work portion of the work. Bernice, I believe this question is directed towards you. What happens to the schedule if the full funding grant agreement is not approved or the full funding federal grant agreement is not approved or approved at a much lower amount? What's the impact on schedule if that happens?
Oh gosh, I don't want to like be what do I want to say? I'm not a, what do they call those people? A card reader. I mean, we have gotten very positive feedback. We don't just submit our application out of the blue. We are in ongoing conversations, coordination with the FTA. So as we're advancing things, we don't just present this packet of materials that we haven't gone over anything. We have bi-weekly meetings with them, and then we have monthly meetings with the FTA, Federal Transit Administration, and as well as a project management oversight consultant, and we have those monthly meetings. So we're reporting on every element of the project. Each area reports on where the project is and what we're doing. So nothing should be a surprise to the FTA, and we have not gotten any like warning signs like I think you all know we got awarded an allocation of money in the president's budget. So all signs are indicating that we're positively positioned to receive the funds. And they know what the ask is. So part of us asking for this money and being accepted from the EPD to this was that they knew the ask was going to be bigger. That was the whole purpose, is so that we could qualify for more money. So I mean, nothing's 1000% certain in this world, but when you go through these programs, the FTA works with you. And if there are anything that you need to work for, like they will do a risk assessment, and there may be some things that they come back and say, you know, you need to do such and such A, B, and C. But it is a very collaborative process. We are not in the dark, and there shouldn't be any big surprises right at the 12th hour.
Thank you, Bernice. There's one more question from James in the chat, which I think this will be the last question, running up on time for this item. There's also opportunity to ask other questions on these topics during the CWG member report out portion of the meeting. And James's next question is, what is the relationship between BART and VTA for the project?
So we have a comprehensive agreement with BART, and that is, it defines our roles and responsibilities as we are advancing design on the project. And then once the project's built, we have an operations and maintenance agreement with BART. They're very complex, detailed agreements, but they basically outline all the terms, timeframes, financial responsibilities between the two agencies.
Great. Thank you, Bernice. And let's move on to the next section, which is Anne. And Anne's going to share what's written on this slide, some beneficial reuse of the excavated material. Anne, over to you.
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Ann Calnan, VTA's Environmental Programs Manager. My part of this presentation gives an overview of this project. It's called the Beneficial Reuse of BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 Tunnel Excavated Material at the former Salt Production Ponds. I know it's a long title, but it's more easily referred to as the Beneficial Reuse Project. Next slide, please. So I believe you're all pretty familiar with the location of the former salt production ponds. When construction of the BART tunnel begins, the beneficial reuse project involves transporting that tunnel material to the South Bay for the sole purpose of raising the bottom elevation of select and deeply subsided salt ponds. By placing the material within these ponds, we will be accelerating the timeline for tidal marsh development. Currently, the salt ponds rely on natural processes such as tidal action to bring in sediment to raise the pond bottoms to marsh plain elevation. And this could take decades. So our project speeds up this process in order to achieve the benefit of habitat restoration on a much quicker time scale. Next slide, please. So there are several key benefits to reusing the tunnel material in this manner. The benefit of raising the pond bottoms to ultimately enable habitat restoration will help to address sea level rise. If the ponds were to rely only on the natural processes and given sea level rise, the buildup of the pond bottoms and ultimate habitat development would take even longer. The project also addresses greenhouse gas emissions, as disposing the excavated material in landfills in the South Bay and beyond requires truck hauls of much longer distances. So the environmental document that was approved by the VTA board in 2018 only discusses this material going to landfills. So the South Bay salt ponds are relatively close to the West Tunnel portal at the Newhall Yard, which is where all this material is going to come out from, as compared to the landfills, because even though there are some landfills relatively close, those landfills could not possibly take all this material. So the truck hauls would have to go much farther to go to other landfills. Next, speeding up the timeline for tidal marsh restoration will ultimately create habitat for threatened and endangered species. The excavated material will also cover existing mercury contamination in some of the ponds that has been a result of historical mining operations. Restoration of salt ponds also addresses flood risks. And lastly, the reuse project avoids wasting all this excavated material as if it was going to go to the landfills. So now we can reuse it for a beneficial use. Next slide, please. So what this slide is showing you on the left is the cover of the BART Silicon Valley Sustainability Master Plan. And on the left, on the right, are the 5 broad categories for the Envision Sustainability Rating System. So in July 2021, we finalized the master plan, the sustainability plan. And in this plan, it is noted that VTA is pursuing an Envision Platinum certification from the Institute for Sustainable Infrastructure. It's similar to LEED for buildings. The reuse of the tunnel excavated material at the salt ponds earns us considerable points in the Envision framework. So most notably, the points are gained in what should be pretty obvious, the natural world category and the climate and risk category. So reusing the material at the salt ponds is the most sustainable alternative compared to other disposal options. And we have been presented with other possible options, but this is using the material at the salt ponds is absolutely the most sustainable. Next slide, please. So this idea of going to the salt ponds and placing the tunnel material into the ponds has been around for a little bit, but it didn't become real until after we got regulatory agency support, because you need that for this project. So we met back in January with the Bay Restoration Regulatory Integration Team, also called BRIT. They're high-level staff at the regulatory agencies, and we presented this project to them. And following that meeting, they placed the project on their priority list. So as a priority project, we will be working cooperatively with the regulators to expedite project permitting, which is a critical path for project success. Another update, the California Coastal Commission recently awarded us a $1.5 million grant, which will go towards the environmental clearance and permitting phases for the reuse project. It does need its own separate environmental clearance. And I've also talked recently to the Wildlife Conservation Board, and I am hoping to, I will submit another grant application and hoping to get a grant for the design phase of the project. I'll explain that in a second here. I'll explain it now. The design phase really consists of the construction methodology on how to place that tunnel material into the ponds. So there's a variety of options being considered right now. We also have to address the Regional Water Quality Control Board's quality assurance criteria to make sure that all that tunnel material that goes into the ponds meets certain criteria in order it's to be classified as quote unquote clean and can be used in the aquatic environment. Okay, finally, we are conducting obviously a community engagement process, which we're doing tonight and we'll do in the future as well, as many times as we can, now that this project is officially underway. So next slide. I do want to highlight that this is a highly collaborative project. Both state and federal regulatory agencies are our partners in this effort, as is the California Coastal Conservancy and Valley Water. Valley Water owns one of the ponds. The partnership to date has been very productive, and we are looking forward to continued engagement with these partners, as well as other interested stakeholders and the public. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Jonathan, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Yeah, so I see you're moving applaud that you're trying to find a very ecologically friendly way to dispose of all that dirt that'll be coming out of the tunnel. What sort of like testing requirements are there on the dirt as far as, you know, contaminants, you know, for using it in this use? And do you expect to see like different results for different parts of the tunnel potentially? And what is the plan in case, you know, there is some sort of contamination? And, you know, would you still dispose in the salt ponds, or does it have to go somewhere else?
So, you know, first of all, the tunnel is actually quite deep. So typically surface contamination, like from, let's say, a gas station, a leaking underground storage tank or whatever, doesn't reach down there. But regardless, we have to take a whole bunch of soil samples, you know, corings, and we've done a lot of that already as part of this project. So all that material and the analysis of that material has already been presented to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. To date, all the samples show that the material is quote unquote clean. So it meets all this, and what the Regional Water Board has has something called a quality assurance project plan. And in that, it describes exactly all the testing requirements, all the criteria you have to meet, and so on and so forth. So it produces kind of an elaborate table of all the different possible chemical constituents or components of soil. And then we compare it to what the QAP, it's called the QAP, has. So that's all been done so far. Additional testing will take place as we move along, and perhaps some will have to be done during construction. I will assume it will be before we take the material over to the salt ponds. I will add that part of the tunnel material will include what are called soil conditioners, which are injected through the tunnel boring machine to be able to allow this the material to flow out of the tunnel through the conveyor belt system as part of the tunnel boring machine. And so we are providing the water board with a whole separate set of analyses about those conditioners so that they are comfortable and it passes all the QAP criteria to be able to, again, dispose of it in the salt ponds. If it doesn't pass, right, if some parts of the tunnel, I mean, all indications are that the material will pass. But let's say there's some testing that at some point that says, oh, this part of the tunnel is contaminated or whatever, then that material will have to go to the salt ponds. I mean, we'll have to go to the landfill. And if it's really contaminated, it has to go to a special landfill. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. Okay. Thanks. And I guess the other question would be is, you know, I understand like the deep soil is probably less likely to be contaminated, but are there any concerns about contamination? I guess at the site. I mean, you mentioned there's materials as part of the TBM, but you know, there's also construction, you know, equipment.
At what site? The
at the inside, like once you've taken it out of the ground, right? Like there's potential for contamination, for example, at like the Newhall Yard or wherever where you're staging the soil.
Actually, Erica's gonna Erica's presentation is coming up, and it's really good and explains how the tunnel material, what happens to it, various stages at the site, at the Newhall site.
All those questions later, but thanks.
Okay.
Yep. But this sounds like a great plan. It's kind of cool to see a synergy here.
There's a question for you in the chat, Anne. Let me make sure we have time for it. This will be the last question. David with Santa Clara University writes, we typically are required to manage archaeological issues here on the SCU campus. Is the project prepared for these issues, which can be significant.
Are you talking about the BART project or the salt pond project? Because the salt pond project, let me clarify, it is a salt pond project, right? You're talking about the reuse project?
David, do you want to clarify your question?
Yeah, no, I was thinking more of the tunneling to grade and up and down. I mean, any large construction project, depends where it is, sometimes encounters issues with archaeology, I'll call it. We
Yeah,
don't have to get into it here, just you know, as part of the plan.
Yeah, well, just real quick, the environmental document for the BART project thoroughly analyzed all of that, right? I mean, you couldn't have approved the environmental document, VTA on the CEQA side and FTA on the Federal Transit Administration on the NEPA side without all that work having been done. So that's a whole other process going on with testing and so on and so forth right now with archaeology and all that. And I you know, I get that. The salt ponds, there are several environmental documents that have preceded the one that we're going to do, and a lot, in fact, all of the cultural resources work has already been done. We will update that information in the new environmental document, but I don't know if there's going to be much more to do. We haven't quite got that far yet with the analysis.
Great. Thank you for the questions. Thank you for the great presentation again. And
Thanks.
Erica, over to you for the update on the downtown customer service center.
Great, thank you. Wanted to share an update on the customer service center. So VTA examined numerous available spaces in downtown near the county's busiest bus transit corridor and downtown transit malls to identify a new space for our customer service center. And after we were made aware that the space at 2 North Market Street was actively seeking a new tenant and could accommodate VTA's functional requirements for our customer service center, VTA signed a long-term lease with the landlord and will be relocating and opening there in early summer of this year in the coming months. A little bit more on the next slide related to what occurs there. It will continue to serve the community and provide assistance for transit users about lost and found items, maps and schedules, purchasing Clipper cards, etc. In addition to relocating, the customer service center will also be opening a BART Silicon Valley Phase 2 project information office at the same location before construction in the area begins. At the office, members of the outreach team, those of us here that you meet with each quarter, will help educate and provide updates to the local community about the progress on the project. Adjacent to the Santa Clara station, our project public information office will be located at our project office on De La Cruz. So that's where that one will be located. So there will be a project office in each of the station areas before construction in that area begins. And that's the update on the customer service center. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Erica. Not seeing anything in the chat or hands up. We're going to jump right over to Clarence for an update on the business resource program. Clarence, take it away.
Hey, everybody. So the business resource program is an initiative that we want to here. We want to go to the next slide. That really addresses a series of objectives. One, obviously, we need to meet VTA's environmental commitment, but really what we're trying to do is help small businesses in particular during the construction, where at the end, we understand that there will be great benefits, but during the construction, there will be disturbances. So as part of this overall effort, we are going to be proactively preparing, and I'll walk through a series of these elements to help businesses as much as possible through the construction for these disturbances. In part, that includes helping increase the business visibility and access during the construction, and really, again, provide an overall strategy. Next slide. So the reason why we're focusing on small businesses is that oftentimes those are the businesses who maybe have less resources or are more dependent on foot traffic and things like that, where people really are frequenting their businesses, and so sometimes there are disruptions that may interrupt that. So as part of that overall strategy, we've defined small businesses as for-profit businesses with up to 35 employees that hold either an active business license in the city of San Jose or Santa Clara, and not deemed a use or a category that is inappropriate, such as liquor stores, ammunition sales, adult stores, and the like. Next slide. And we prepared the business resource program through, again, this is not something that we just came up with overnight. We really spent quite a bit of time, including engaging with the VTA Small Business Task Force, which presented earlier this week to them, the same slides that you are seeing today, and have gotten some feedback, have done case studies with other business assistance programs, understanding, what has worked, what are some of the benefits or the challenges for small businesses during construction, having interviews with business resource providers. That includes understanding what services they provide, and again, experiences in other instances. We've also conducted a series of outreaches, including surveys of small businesses in the project area as part of the CTMP and other efforts. And again, Erica will talk a little bit more about those later on. And additionally, we did look and did some sort of best practices looking at other transit agencies who've gone through similar efforts around the country. And again, I tried to really glean the best practices for our community. Next slide. So the four elements that we've identified, and this is again through earlier assistance with JC Lacey, but we've really sort of helped refine that effort. The four elements are shop local marketing, signage and wayfinding, small business resource connections and support, and also direct financial assistance. I'll walk through each of these over the next series of slides. Next slide. So shop local marketing, what is that? That is an effort where we are creating a branded marketing campaign. So really trying to create the sense of place, bring businesses and the community together to really encourage that local foot traffic, support the businesses. Aspects of the shop local marketing will include a social media campaign and a website, and we have examples where those websites again can highlight some of these businesses. One thing just to mention is that this business resource program is an opt-in program. So for businesses who are really wanting to engage and take advantage, it is obviously at your disposal. Additionally, shop local marketing has a series of signage, and you'll see some slides later on, including posters, banners, window clings, things like that, that really, again, create the sense of, the businesses in Santa Clara are still active and are open for business. As part of that, providing some additional marketing assistance that might be providing some graphics or some materials that business can use and leverage from this overall initiative. Additionally, we've identified or we'll be preparing also vendor lists so that business can identify that their willingness and just be part of the area, so that, for instance, if there are initiatives or events, we'll refer folks to these businesses in the area. We'll have pop-up events, including, again, whether it be being part of additional events or creating some of our own. And then additionally, promotional material. So what you see on the left-hand side is, again, one logo that we've sort of developed as just sort of characterizing this local shop local marketing for the BSV project area. But also you see a little card that has sort of different images, and really what that can be is a loteria, where people can get stamps on, and once they complete the card, can be able to get some prizes such as a transit pass. Next slide, please. Signage and wayfinding, that's the second element. Excuse me. That's the second element And really what that does is, as I sort of described, is that it creates the sense of place. And as you see on the right-hand side, there's a street pole that has some banners. There's some construction signs that say businesses are open, window clings. And what that does is it increases that visibility and awareness that the businesses are open and welcome your business. It encourages the foot traffic. And these signs will be coordinated with other construction signs so that, again, they will be able to stand out and they will be installed by either the contractor or VTA. Next slide, please. Here's an example of a map area where you can imagine that there will be a variety of different signs that will be located throughout the corridor, including bus shelters, as you see. So we've initially started off with a pretty large list of sign types and have sort of narrowed them down and refined them to really sort of be as most effective and coordinated as possible through the area. And again, we'll be working more closely to actually develop these for the Santa Clara area as well. Next slide. The third element is small business resource connections and support. Again, these three elements will be really prepared in advance. We really want to be nimble and responsive to the community and have these in place before construction starts. So as part of the overall initiative is, helping small businesses get prepared. So we'll be developing a referral list of small business organizations. Again, it's a mixture of understanding, the businesses that are in the area, but also other business organizations that provide additional support. There are community organizations that provide some training. So those trainings are what we'll be also tying together in sponsored open houses where we can bring the businesses together with these resource providers and create those relationships and allow the community to really take advantage of these services and support that they may not otherwise know, and be able to help them, again, just improve their businesses. And then lastly, we'll be looking at leveraging some web-based training events, again, to help businesses through this overall effort. Next slide. The fourth element is small business direct financial assistance. What this is trying to provide some grant funds for eligible small businesses that meet certain criteria. And in particular, we are being very sensitive to the disruptions that may occur, and I'll sort of walk through what that means. Again, they need to qualify as a small business, as sort of described earlier. They will need to be located adjacent to above ground construction and staging areas. And unlike some other corridor-wide road projects, this construction is really focused in certain locations, and so that's why we are really trying to limit it to the impacts or the disruptions right around these areas, and that these businesses will have experienced at least 1 month of continuous disruption. And some of those disruptions that you see in the images below are where there might be some sidewalk closures, crosswalks that may be closed, lanes or that may have some closures, as well as parking, temporarily removed. Those are things that we know that will happen. They'll be part of the schedule, and then we will be able to obviously provide the information in advance to the community with real-time maps and updated maps. But this financial assistance is, again, really to help those businesses that are directly affected by these disruptions right around the construction area. Next slide. And so what does that look like? We are still working with VTA leadership to define the dollar amounts, but it will be at this point, we anticipate it will be a tiered system where really having at least 1 month of continuous disruption, there will be an award amount that can be really streamlined to get in terms of being located in this area directly adjacent to these areas, and we anticipate additional amounts with a longer disruption as well as probably needing to provide some additional statements of actual disruption during this period. These applications will be reviewed by VTA and or assisted by a third party to just make sure that the businesses are eligible and the disruption has occurred. And we do anticipate that it should be pretty quick in terms of the disbursement of those funds. Next slide. And then lastly, as part of the overall business resource program, we will be engaging a business liaison team that serves really as the conduit and between VTA and the business owner. So during this disruption, so they will be establishing those relationships with the businesses in advance. They'll be visiting with them, understanding what their concerns are, and really become, if you wish, I'll use the word ombudsman, but just a point of contact that they can really sort of, they know they have the contact information for these folks, and that they can be able to address some of their concerns or just communicate back to VTA, what's happening. The business liaison team will be multilingual and be able to communicate both project information, what's happening in terms of the construction, as well as again, convey back all these any business concerns to the team. Last slide, I think, is just to give you a sense of the timeline. We're again currently in the process of putting all these elements together. Construction, as you'll hear, is going to be later on in 2024. So we do anticipate this to be rolled out, later this year. And this is my last slide. So I am welcome any questions. There's one question I read. I see on the chat. What kind of disruptions will impact small businesses, and what the timing? The disruptions that took place in Alum Rock a few years ago, yes. So the disruptions, let me answer the first part of it. The disruptions that we anticipate are what I sort of described earlier. Because unlike Alum Rock, which obviously had a lot more impact to an overall corridor with a roadway construction, this one will be focused on, it's sort of, you could say it's sort of similar to a development project where it's within the fence line, it's within property lines. And so a lot of that construction will be off the public right of way, if you wish, but there will be trucks that will be, coming and going through this area. There will be some, lane, I'd say diversions or closures temporarily. And so those are the things that we anticipate, through the corridor. And again, those will be mitigated as best as possible. And I think Erica may be touching upon some of that later on, but those are the things that we anticipate. And what sort of traffic disruptions or mitigations? Yeah, so I think that, in terms of, clearly signage is going to be an important part. Maintenance of traffic will obviously be an important part, but it should not be as impactful as, again, closing, a large corridor for portions of that corridor for roadway reconstruction.
Thanks, Clarence. And Jonathan, I see your hand up.
Yeah, one thing that will surprise me, you said what is that small businesses are ones that are considered inappropriate are not considered small businesses. So what is the definition of an inappropriate business, and how is that list of businesses determined?
Yeah, they're not, correct you, they're not considered not small businesses. They were just not eligible for the grant funding. So the direct financial assistance is providing funds. And if you imagine like eateries or retail that really is more directly affected by maybe disruption of the foot traffic, that is really what the direct financial assistance is to support. It's in part, we just also want to make sure that these funds are appropriately provided, and there's not a legal issue let's say, funding alcohol supply, stores and things like that. So that's kind of get the gist of kind of why we're doing that.
Yeah, but I guess is what makes the determination of what's on that list, because like there's a lot of fine lines between like liquor stores sometimes and convenience stores. Like down the street for me, a lot of liquor stores are owned by minority business owners, small families, and they're sometimes small businesses, and this could further discriminate against those type of groups who have been historically redlined because they may own less favorable businesses, right, and find that they're successful at that. And then there's other things like, for example, in downtown Santa Clara, on Santa Clara Street, there's places like ISO Beers. I mean, on one hand, is that a liquor store? They have off sale like beer sales, but people go there to hang out. Is that a bar? Like, does that meet the criteria of
yes.
a
So
restaurant?
we
So
will
like there's
have,
there's a lot of challenges
sure.
there. So I'm just trying to understand, like, how do you
Yep.
draw that line, ahead of time? It seems like it's kind of arbitrary.
So what we've defined is, I mean, as we're refining it, there is, let's say, like greater than 60% of their sales is liquor is one definition, and so that is again, we'll be working through and having a lot more specifics on that, but trying to create a little bit more clarity in that question as you sort of described. I mean, if it's a convenience store and the percentage obviously is a lot lower, that would be, they would be eligible.
But this would include things like bars, beer. There's a couple brewery tap rooms down there, that are near some of these project sites. I mean, they're probably primarily liquor sales, even though it's beer. It's maybe not hard alcohol. Would they be excluded?
I would say, I mean, you presented some interesting comments and good comments. We'll take that back, and we'll, again, as we're refining it, we will take those in consideration and again come back with a little bit more clarity there. Bernice, I'm not sure if you want to add anything.
Yeah,
but
I did. I was trying to raise my hand and get my off mute on, but we will be following. There are some legalities as to this is public money, right? We're a publicly funded agency. It's a publicly funded project, so there are legalities as to what public funds. So there are constraints when there is alcohol and tobacco. For convenience stores, I think, as Clarence mentioned, there is a proportionate. If it's a convenience store and alcohol is like 20% of their business, right? Then that convenience store still. But if the business's primary purpose is alcohol, tobacco, or like adult entertainment, there are some restrictions on the use of public funds, and I can get those clarified. But that's what's sort of constraining the project.
Okay, it's good to understand what the public funds are, because I'd hate for public funds to end up also discriminating against minority business owners. And I do know there's a few small businesses on Santa Clara, like ISO Beers. There's Foxtail Fermentation, which is actually a brewery tap room, and that's a tiny little business. It's like a couple owners. I would hate to see that those potentially get excluded because of some arbitrary rule. But
it's not arbitrary. It's definitely based on the use of public funds related to alcohol and tobacco.
Building from existing classifications. So I think we need to move on from this. Jonathan, we've heard your point taken, and we're going to jump on to the next topic. Although there might be, we have time for one more question on the business resource program, if there is one. It needs to be a short question and answer, though. David.
Just, I assume that there's also focus on, there's, my son went to Horace Mann, there's City Hall, there's, all those other, there's churches and so forth that are not, small businesses, that there's a plan for them as well that are, going to need to continue to operate.
Thank you for that comment. I think we'll take that as a comment. We'll move on to the next section. The early construction activities, all the interesting stuff happening in the West Portal to build this tunnel. A lot of content here, but I think it's interesting, and a lot of other people do too. So Erica, please take it away.
Great, thank you. First off, so we're going to be talking about construction activities, and it all relates to the CP2, the tunnel and track work, QHA trailer contractors, contract specific construction transportation management plan. A reminder that the purpose of the CTMP is to minimize and reduce to the extent possible construction-related transportation impacts to all modes during construction. I know we've walked through this slide multiple times before with you all, so I'm just going to touch on it briefly, the steps in developing these specific contract-specific plans. So coordinate with QHA Trailer, the contractor coordinates with VTA and the city during the development. In addition, we've met with adjacent stakeholders during the development for regular coordination, including Todd and others from Hunter Partners, as well as Costco and other folks in the area. In this example for this first CTMP. And then in addition, we have community engagement. We had public meetings in March to talk through the activities there. So we can go to the next slide. We had an in-person meeting at Santa Clara University. Several of you were there. Thank you for attending. And we had an online meeting to provide information regarding these early construction activities at the West Portal in VTA's New Hall Yard. We had several folks attend and were able to answer quite a few questions. If you missed it, there's a link here where you can go on our website to take a look at the recording and the slides that were presented. A lot of them I'm going to talk through now briefly as well, so we'll be able to share the information here also. So next slide. The time frame we're talking about here is the next couple of years. So we'll be doing early construction activities on the site to prepare for tunneling operations, including constructing and operating the fabricating tunnel lining segments, assembling the tunnel boring machine, excavating the tunnel portal area where the tunnel boring machine will eventually launch, and constructing on-site a roadway network and such, which I'm going to dive into deeper on the next slide here. So to orient you all to the site here, north is to the right, the 880 freeway is on the left side, Brokaw is on the right, Coleman Avenue is along the bottom of the screen, and the active rail corridor runs through the middle of the screen. The red area outlines where VTA's New Hall Yard property is, which is where all these activities will be taking place. As you can see, the site's directly adjacent to the active rail corridor where UP and Caltrain and other rail operates in the area currently from 4:30 a.m. to 1:30 a.m. There are 3 entrances to the site. All the construction employee personal vehicles will be entering at the blue dot area on New Hall Street, and the blue areas on the graphic there are the parking areas. The construction truck vehicle entrances are shown in the yellow color, and they will be accessing the roadway network in the goldenrod yellow color shown on the screen on Brokaw Road and New Hall Drive, and then heading down Coleman to the 880 freeway. In addition, the area in gray there is on-site offices for the construction staff. The area in the green, the long rectangle in green there, is the West Portal and the tunnel boring machine shaft, which will be constructed during this phase of work. This phase of work only includes the construction of the shaft and the launch structure, but not the operation of the tunnel boring machine. So the assembly of the tunnel boring machine, but it will not be in operation in this phase. And we'll also be constructing a tunnel lining factory in the blue area that I'll go into a few more details on in a minute. In addition, the area in purple there is where the tunnel lining segments will be stored eventually. And so during this phase, we need to prepare the ground for that. And the area in brown is where the grout plant will be located. And so the construction of the grout plant will occur during this time frame. And then the area in pink there is where the excavated material has been, which is approximately 2 acres in size, will need to be constructed. And then in addition, there will be a noise curtain installed along the west side of the tunnel boring machine shaft, which is the line shown in kind of cyan color in the middle of the screen, to reduce the noise from these early construction activities from the existing residences there on the west side of the corridor. Before we dig into some of the more details of those activities, wanted to talk about some of the steps we're taking related to noise and vibration. We'll be continuously monitoring noise and vibration levels, as well as using additional spot testing during activities that are anticipated to generate higher levels of noise and vibration. I mentioned the noise curtain. There's an example here on this page, an example of what a noise curtain could look like. In addition, there are additional mitigations related to construction equipment and operations that will be implemented, including turning off idling equipment, lining the truck beds with materials to reduce noise, minimizing noise emissions outside of the public right-of-way, installing low-impact kind of swoosh backup alarms to be used during nighttime hours as opposed to the beeping, and various things like that. Those are a couple examples. We go to the next slide. So we talked about the access into the lots. If you look at the map on the bottom, the area, the purple lines show where the truck queuing, where trucks will stage on site before heading out to the freeway. These areas will also, the queuing on site helps to minimize the amount of the trucks on the public roadway. And the image on the right is an example of how the trucks will be washed before they exit onto the public roadway network to limit the amount of dirt and dust that's brought into the roadway network. Next slide. So I know Clarence earlier talked about a lot of potential impacts as part of the business resource program, but for this early construction activities at the yard, from a transportation perspective, you're likely to just see increased truck traffic on the roadway network and some construction signage. And behind the fencing screening that we have, there'll be construction activities within the yard for extended hours. So there are no anticipated lane closures or detours or anything in this area for this phase of work. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the schedule. So for this 2-year period, this work activities here will require extended work and hauling hours that go beyond the standard city work hours. As work begins late this summer, the activities will be a single shift, meaning work will begin at 6 a.m. and end at 6 p.m. and work on Saturdays from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And hauling will happen during standard time, so 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. This is the time period shown in light green. Beginning sometime in late 2023, critical construction activities related to the tunnel boring machine shaft in the west portal, that dark green area that I'm going to go into in a minute, will ramp up and will require a 22-hour workday with a 22-hour shift of hauling for the critical concrete pours related to that work, as well as the continued Saturday work. So that's the time frame, 15 months here shown in the teal color on the schedule. And then after that time frame, then they will shift back to only hauling during the daytime, and the continued double shifted work, the 22-hour work days and Saturday work will continue in the Navy time frame here. And then once this time frame is complete, these activities are complete, then we'll head into major construction. And so once we know more details related to that, we'll be back to talk about that at another time, but are not covering those details today. Now I'm going to go into some of the details about some of the facilities here. So a critical component of this work area is the tunnel lining factory and the storage area. So the tunnel lining factory is in a navy blue there at the bottom. It's the facility to fabricate the concrete tunnel lining segments that will be installed in the tunnel as the soil is removed. So after they're created, they'll be stored in the tunnel lining storage area, shown in purple. So in order to, we had to prepare the ground for each of the tunnel lining segments where they'll be stored, as they each weigh 40,000 pounds each. So the construction of this facility will begin sometime in the summer and will take place for about a year. Next slide. Once the facility is constructed, then it will begin to operate and fabricate the segments. The operations will take place from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Before the tunnel boring machine can be launched, we need to have 360 tunnel lining segments fabricated, which is about 13% of the total that we'll need overall for the project. The factory can produce 6 segments per day. And once the one ring around the tunnel requires 9 segments. So once the tunnel boring machine is fully up and operational, it can install 54 segments every 24 hours. So there's a lot to do to get ahead and stay in pace with the tunnel boring machine. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the preparation of the area for the tunnel boring machine, some more details and images related to that. And those activities are anticipated to begin in the fall timeframe in the area shown in green. Next slide. The supportive excavation, or SOE, is required as part of the tunnel boring machine preparation. The SOE construction creates the concrete walls below ground to aid the excavation and create space for the tunnel boring machine to be assembled. To do this, the construction of the TBM shaft and the portal, the area shown in green, requires using excavation equipment, trucks hauling concrete in and excavated materials out, and other heavy equipment to dig the slurry walls that are roughly 160 feet deep, to then accommodate the 80-foot deep excavation that the tunnel boring machine will launch from. A reminder that the tunnel boring machine itself has a diameter of 53 feet, so it's a large piece of equipment. This work will be double shifted and require that the double shifted hauling to accommodate these concrete pours in the complex sequence of work required to build the shaft walls. So that was this area in teal on the graphic we saw at the last time. So the pictures here, there's another picture of the sound curtain, and then on the left is some of the construction equipment installing some rebar walls here on the graphic, on the slide rather. And then to touch more on the excavated materials bin. So this is where the soils that are dug out by the TBM during major construction will be stored. The construction of the bin is what will occur during this time frame, requires excavating the existing soil at the placement of the bin, followed by lining and installing retaining walls around the outside. There's an example of one of the bins there on the right. Jonathan, I believe you had a question related to how things move on site. So between the west portal shaft that we saw earlier in green and this tunnel, this bin that's in the pink color, there'll be a series of trackways where during major construction, the excavated material will be taken out of the tunnel and put in the bin here. Next slide. Thank you. In order to begin digging, the tunnel boring machine requires a launch structure to push off of. And so that's where the support structures come into play. So they will serve to help push the tunnel boring machine forward until it's able to propel itself from the tunnel liners that it's put in place. The launch platform construction is, you can see the launch platform in the photo on the right there with the structure around the tunnel boring machine. So the platform needs to be completed before the tunnel boring machine arrives to be assembled on the platform. Once the TBM arrives, work to assemble the TBM will be double shifted, and the support structures and assembly will continue until it's ready to launch. We wanted to touch on some of the ways that we'll be reducing dust, as we all know that construction activities create dust. The contractor will be covering and moistening trucks carrying loose materials, suspending dust-intensive activities during high winds. We showed the truck wash of removing the visible mud and dirt from the trucks before they go on the roadway, adjacent roadways, and they will also be surveying the roadways to remove visible dirt and mud as well. In addition, we'll be installing screening around the site, similar to what is seen here on the image, and we're coordinating with Ryan's team at the earthquakes on some collaborative images and branding for portions. So we're working with the adjacent stakeholders. As there will be nighttime work, lighting is critical to safe construction operations. And in order to minimize ambient light affecting the nearby residences and businesses, we'll be using lights which directed downwards towards the work activities, similar to what's seen on the right. The number of lights will be minimized to the extent that construction safety will allow. And at KST, the contractor is working on a site lighting plan to implement some of these strategies. And then last, related to CTMPs, just wanted to touch on those future additional CTMPs that we're aware of by the contract package 2 team by KST. So this first CTMP is for the early construction activities at the West Portal for the next 2 years. The team has started developing the next CTMP for early and major construction at Dearborn, downtown San Jose, and 28th Street stations. And then they'll have another document for major construction at the West Portal And then they anticipate a fourth document for early and major construction at the East Portal. And then once the other contractors come on board, they as well will be developing construction transportation management plan. So there'll be lots of updates on construction in the coming years for all of you. Next, I just briefly wanted to touch on our building monitoring program. The BSV2 project team will be performing construction-related surveys and monitoring on historic and other properties near the construction areas. The goals of this are to assess and develop a baseline of current architectural and structural conditions, perform monitoring throughout construction, and conducting post-construction surveys. Some of the activities for building monitoring may include general assessment surveys, pre-construction surveys, air, noise, and vibration monitoring, property protection, instrumentation, and monitoring. So VTA is coordinating and will be reaching out with property owners as needed to conduct these related activities over the next couple of years. Just wanted you to know about that program that we're working on. And with that, that's the early construction update we've got for tonight, and happy to take any questions.
Eric, I've got a quick question for you. This is Todd Trickell.
Hey, Todd. Yeah.
Thank you for the presentation. So on slide 42, you'd indicated some of the key stakeholders. You listed Costco and the stadium. We're obviously hypersensitive to the area, just given the double shift work that you're anticipating. So just given the fact that we've got 724 apartments there, if you wouldn't mind adding us as a key stakeholder, just given the fact we'll be in the middle of our leasing activities during that.
Definitely consider you a key stakeholder. Yes.
Yes. Thank you for that. And then also, what motivation or oversight, if you will, do the drivers have to kind of allocate their trips out those different points of access, given the fact that the materials bin is really located more towards the Brokaw frontage? Will they really be motivated to go all the way back down to the Newhall exit to leave the property?
Yeah, so a reminder that this phase is just the construction of these features. There's not going to be anything being put into materials bin during this phase. But regardless, the KST has a truck boss is the name of the role, the person who's in charge of, and they have a trucker management plan that they're developing, how they manage all the trucks that are coming in and out, and letting them know which way they need to go and where they need to go, and making sure they adhere to what's been approved and agreed upon as part of the construction transportation management plan.
Got it. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey, Erica, can we add Todd to our meeting tomorrow, please?
Sure. Yes.
And I see Jonathan has his hand up as well.
I had a couple different questions, and I'll try to keep them brief. The first question, you mentioned you have a list of historical buildings you plan to monitor. Do you have like what that list is, and like how far away are you planning to do monitoring? And can owners of historical buildings sign up for monitoring, or how does that process work?
No, it was determined, the locations were determined as part of our environmental clearance. And so they were included in, there's a very specific process with FTA and what's on the FTA National Register versus, and so there's a set number of properties that are part of the historic building investigation and monitoring program.
Okay, so are we, I guess I don't recall, I was trying to look through the EIR and I wasn't clear what those are. Is that in the EIR, or where can that list be found?
I don't remember the exact reference of where it is off the top of my head. We can follow up with that after the meeting.
Okay, it'd be good to know, because we have the historic train depot, and
yes,
there's also the Women's
those are
Adobe and a
included
few
in the
other ones. So I want to make sure those are covered.
Yeah, so I think the only historic properties in Santa Clara are the train depot and the speeder sheds and the radio tower there.
Oh, so it's not going all the way.
Site.
Okay, to the
Yeah.
Adobe. I guess it's a little further, but
yeah.
Okay, second thing I had a question about. I don't recall the discussion of the noise levels and the round-the-clock construction at the last community meeting, at least that it was 6 a.m. to 4 a.m. That was a little bit of a surprise.
Oh, yeah, no, we covered that. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
you
you missed that.
I must have missed that part.
Yeah.
But I did have a question about that. Do you have like a list of like the regulated noise levels, like especially like, between like 9 p.m. and 4 a.m., like at what distance and what decibels are expected?
Yeah, so it's not very as cut and dry as that, as it's a 8-hour threshold. And so there's not an exact list, but I can circle back with you with more information, and maybe it might be helpful to come back and present here kind of more on how construction noise is
Okay.
monitored. So we can follow up with more information.
Yeah,
on
it'd be
that.
good to understand that and get a sense for like what the levels should be expected when and how much and distance. So thanks.
Cool. Thank you, Erica. Thank you for the questions. We're at time for this topic. So we're going to jump on down to the CWG member report back, where this is the time for the CWG members just to ask any questions you want, share whatever you want. We particularly like to hear what you've been sharing about the project with your communities and what you've been hearing back, so we can be aware of the issues that are out there and jointly address them together. But this is your time, so I'll open the floor. Existing CWG members first. So if you want to say something, please raise your hand or drop something in the chat. And I see, David, your hand is up.
Yeah, hi,
Please,
I'm just going to join on Jonathan's about the 22-hour shift and noise levels, since we have students living on the other side of the construction zone there. So we'd be interested in understanding what those are so we can communicate that out.
Thank you. Well, noted. Jack, I see your hand up as well.
Hi. Hey, I just wanted to thank the VTA BART team. We had an open house in April, and they came out with their table there and talked to the people who all attended our open house. And they did a great job. Every time I looked out there, there was always people around the table out there. So I want to thank them for being out there.
Great. Thank you, Jack. Happy to participate. I'll speak on behalf of our team for that. And if there's other folks that offers out there, if there's a community event where you think it may make sense for our project to come and table, please let us know. But that's an existing community event that you think we should participate in, please feel welcome to reach out. Great. Other hands? David, is your hand a remnant?
Yeah, it's remnant, but I still have another question. I'm sure somebody has coordinated with the earthquakes and that intersection at Coleman and the entrance to 880 can be really crazy even without construction, where the in and out is and that whole shopping center. And then also just maybe more of a comment. I'm sure somebody's thought about the roadway there with that many trucks going on it full of debris. It's probably going to be in some kind of shape afterwards that it isn't in now. So maybe more of a comment, but it's going to be sort of stay away from that area, in my opinion.
Erica, do you want to respond?
Yes, we're definitely coordinating with the earthquakes as well as Hunter Partners very closely through the development of this, and have met multiple times and are all meeting again tomorrow. As related to your comment about the roadway degradation, yes, as the roads are used for hauling, there's agreements between VTA and the cities to restore that, to get the roadway restored after, based on the impact due to the hauling and the degradation due to the truck hauling on the roadways. And the contractors are required to monitor that, and where there are potholes or things that happen as they're still using the roadways for hauling, to fix those items. So that will be monitored during construction and addressed.
Cool. And you're getting a thumbs up from David. So thanks, Erica. Thanks for the question, David. Any other hands or questions in the chat? If not, we will move towards adjourning. Next slide, please. So before we adjourn, just a reminder, in addition to the other meetings that I mentioned at the beginning, the CWG will reconvene. We'll have another meeting in September, so we'll see you back. The draft agenda is here, the phase 2 update, update on early construction activities, what's happening with community engagement, and the station and planning efforts in the station area. And we will also see you out at all the things we see you at before the September CWG meeting. So looking forward to seeing you then and at the next CWG meeting. So thank you very much, everyone, for participating in the CWG meeting tonight, your ongoing participation, and we will see you around. Thanks a lot. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye all. Thanks for
All right,
participating.
thanks.
Have a good day.